Let's just take the three breath highway, as it's called, here really briefly before we start. And I'll put the description in the comments too. But so take just wherever you're at, just pause and come into as much stillness as you can, and just notice any place that's can be released really quick of tension throughout the body, anything just clearing out to say, just relax that for a second. And then invite you to become present with three full breaths every moment of the inhalation, of the pause, if there is one, every moment of the exhalation and the pause. You're welcome to take deeper breaths if you want, however you want to do it or not do it. Just be there for at least three full breaths and pauses. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes if they're not already. And I welcome you here for this really brief thought process Thursday. It's wild. I thought it was Wednesday. I was going to do a Wednesday, Open Wisdom Wednesday. So reflecting on this today after quite a journey for me yesterday. Biked an hour and a half. I took an hour ferry ride, biked an hour and a half, then biked an hour and a half back and another hour ferry ride. So that was an interesting journey. Um, yeah, Holbeck is where I went in Denmark. Pretty neat little oceanside um, town, city, municipality. Anyway, so the thought process that I wanted to get in today here, I thought is a couple days ago I turned on I had total boomer moment. So me. I was like, I went and asked my fiance. I thought, well, is this some kind of new Danish? Not that I'm a boomer, but I just shouldn't maybe use that term. But is there some kind of Danish social media thing called So Me? And then it just dawned on me right there that was a shortening for social media. It reminds me of this old story how somebody mistook LOL for lots of love. And it's a whole funny story, like some teachers tell, and how it played into some shenanigans of what happened just from that simple misunderstanding. There's so many different comedies and sitcoms that are based around a misunderstanding. In a way, it's funny, but in a way, it's, ignorance on display, right? Should inspire us to wisdom, not more ignorance. The Pali word is moha. I think that's funny because it's ha ha, more ha ha ha, right? Nothing wrong with humor, but ignorance, not so much. So Michelle K says, Grand Rising from Nebraska. Yes, I hear this term a lot, and I wonder if this is those practitioners that are on like more magical paths or whatnot. Michelle, if you care to chime in here to set me straight on this, I see more and more people using this greeting. It's really just on a surface level, grand is something huge, rising, coming up, right? Not falling into states of deprivation. Okay, Sharon says, hi from my bed in Los Angeles, California, first timer. Yo, Sharon, what's going on? How is it? Michelle kind of clarifies what I said there. So exactly. Okay, so there's a long-winded introduction, and well, not entirely done yet, because speaking of wind, there's quite a bit of wind here, and when I fired up the So Me, which we were saying, this is it's so me, right? There's wind here, quite a bit of wind, and I just walked by the church on our little island here earlier, and then here we get reports that there's a fire nearby it, just really recently. So I don't think it's a huge deal, but I've seen kind of devastation with storms. I fired up the SoMe a couple of days ago, and I don't normally do that, but looked around, and we've got uh, maybe port strikes. I don't know if they're still going. I deliberately don't look at these things, and there's so many really dark, horrible things going on that I won't get into, obviously, but then we just got the mainstream challenges too. And this leads me to think about, um, you know, what it really does is this instruction in the Buddhist tradition for meditation, and it's setting aside grief and despair and a kind of lust, greed and lust, I think, for the world. So, I mean, there's kind of two camps, I feel, and what we want out of life. And some people will just look at the world and what can I get? What can I do? Even, and there's nothing wrong with, obviously it's a great benefit to serve others, to be a benefit in the world, to do skillful actions, to cultivate skillful actions. Some people want to get in there and they just want to grab whatever they can for themselves at all costs. And it's like an obsession for the mind, right? And so that just needs to be set aside temporarily. It'll always be there. The world in that state will always be there. But what we're more confronted with here, I guess, even more so here in recent times. And it's always been this way to some degree or another. I would imagine, I haven't been around with memory, that there's so much grief in the world, right? The despair. You just totally get disheartened by turning on the media. And I heard a very wise teacher, say recently that the people serving up media, for the most part, corporate government, kind of things like that, and a lot of even independent outlets now. And anyway, we'll get into that. But they don't care about you. They really don't care about you when they're spewing their news. I mean, some of it's helpful, right? And people connect on this, but if they don't care about you, why should you care so much about what they're propagating out there? So, and then this disconnect between, now, this is not saying I don't care about people and things that happen and the harm being done. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there seems to be oftentimes a disconnect between that and what's going on in our daily lives. We look at our surroundings and what's happening in our environment with the people we interact with in our daily lives, or maybe even there's a lack of a lot of interaction if people like me have chose to be more kind of in isolated surrounds for the time being, even though it's a forced travel, not forced, but travel coming up here. So we look at this disconnect, or maybe even look for similarities. Maybe there are some similarities, but if they don't care about you so much, which it's usually to spread agendas are involved, but everybody has an agenda. I have an agenda, right? And then to sell advertising as well. So if it bleeds, it leads, they say. So sitting those aside, I think, is very helpful when we do a serious meditation practice, or are thinking about doing a more serious meditation practice or anything. Because what the mind can do, in my experience, is it can start grabbing on, glomming on to what I want out there. And like I say, there's nothing wrong in and of itself to wanting to engage in skillful actions and to help and be of service. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. It's instead of turning inward, the mind can still be going and going on what I need to do, what I can get, planning, even remembering, right? But then, like I said, the grief and despair for the world, people just get so disheartened, and they can't just set it aside temporarily because it's presented like on social media and um, mainstream or corporate or governmental or whatever we want to call it, media, that this is so super important. And I'm not saying it totally is, but every single breath you take, right? If you miss one of those, it's done. That's it. So we're literally facing life and death every moment with our breath. So if we miss one of those breaths, that's it. So that's why one of the reasons I feel that the breath is such a great meditation object, right? But it's so kind of low key, and we don't really notice the importance of it. But this body is done after one half breath not happening. So, what's more important than that, really, moment to moment? I mean, yes, of course, there might be things like a super disaster that you need to escape for your life, or something's threatening your life immediately. But this notion of, okay, this is it. Do we know when this last moment will come? Do we know when our last breath will be? Maybe some extreme yogis know this, but a lot of us don't. So it is of vital importance that we will all face this certainty unless we fully realize awakening, and then that's a whole nother thing, right? So, don't waste time. And how are we going to really tune into our meditation object and our thing if we're constantly lured by shiny objects, and this is more important, this is more important, this is more important all the time, bombarded, wanting our attention, saying how much more important it is than ourselves. And that's how the world changes, I feel, is when we work on ourselves, or not even work, I don't even know if that's the right way, but we address unhealed pain, right? Unaddressed pain is so important for us to address and turn towards as much as we can in a skillful way, and address unaddressed pain. That, I feel, is how the world's going to is going to become better as well. And kind of preaching to the choir here, right? Because everybody here is interested in that. But how do we convey that? How do we convey the importance of that? But we don't really even need to. We can embody and exemplify this to everyone we meet and come in contact with. And if even if that doesn't happen, then when we are faced with uncertain challenges, which is pretty much life, right? Then we can have more inner resources for meeting whatever challenges we're meeting with more skillfulness and more heart, more helpful, beautiful, boundless heart qualities that act as a balm and a support and a guide for well-being. So Michelle Kay says, first she says, using words more thoughtfully. Yes, this is really, this is the thought process Thursday, right? Thoughtfully. And that I really personally haven't had much challenge with, because I've got this bias towards like cognition and intellect. But it's not nearly as important as wisdom, I feel. And mindfulness of what's being said, right? This is a tough one, a challenging one, because there's 5 guidelines here. um, is it true? That's a whole one in itself. And are we being, honest with ourselves? So honesty is there, but sometimes, it doesn't make sense to speak honesty or speak truth. Even though I find it really important, sometimes that's going to cause maybe more trouble than it's worth. So sometimes it needs to also be kind. When we say something, it needs to be true, ideally, right? I mean, I fall way short of all this too, and it needs to not to be it needs to be at the right time, right? You don't yell fire in a crowded theater. Well, that's dishonest anyway if it's not actually happening. But you wouldn't really choose to cause a scene at a wedding reception, right? Sober anyway, or you know I don't know what's appropriate and what's not. When's the right time to say something and when isn't? Um, and then how we say it. Is it kind? Is it is it going to lead towards? This is the one, at least in America, that the biggest challenge. Is it going to lead towards harmony and unification, or is it going to cause division? We see so much division in society. Everything's kind of rigged to divide and conquer people. So when we speak, how can we use it to unify and to bring people together instead of them apart? So our speech plays a huge role in that. And yeah, it's a training, right? It's a training. It's also icing on the cake if the words aren't harsh, right? If they're not harsh, that's helpful too. If they're pleasant to hear, that's great too. And I think I'm missing one guideline here, but Michelle says, I don't watch TV, news, etc. Prefer not to include fear or entertain that I cannot control. Yes, the TV news is excruciating for me to watch, actually. So I will hear clips in there, every once in a while. And I find out, even, I've cut off a lot of that. I'll find out I'll still know what I need to know. So one of my friends will tell me something happens, and then I can look into it if I need to or not. Or even just scanning the headlines, right? Or find someone that you really find helpful and useful and on the up and up, and let them filter the news for you. And then if there's anything worthwhile, then you can go in and investigate on your own, not just taking their word for it, but looking into it for yourself. But more times than not, it's kind of the same formula. You've got war, money, and slime. So war, money, programming. Well, of course, we all need to be pay our bills and stuff, but there's a whole huge program, especially for guys. The rest of it's basically slime. I'll just lump everything together there too. So yeah, and visual images are very, very powerful. So extremely powerful. So that's why I like even listening or reading headlines more than images, because they can sear in our minds a lot and have a really big effect. And what we pay attention to matters. We give energy to what we pay attention to. So where's your mind? Where's your attention? What kind of food are you feeding yourself? Not emotionally, cognitively, and with consciousness. So that matters. What you pay attention to matters big time, and how and the intent you have when you watch it and consume it too. I don't like confrontation, B says, yet people think I'm being weak for not talking or wanting to debate. Ooh, this is a big one. B, I'll just comment on this really briefly, and we're over time here. Confrontation, yeah, this is where it comes into discernment, right? So, is it just a preference that you don't like confrontation? Is there something you're avoiding? For me, I rarely find, but I agree, I rarely find confrontation is of any use or help. There are some individuals, though, that they will not kind of budge unless they're confronted. There's something that needs to be done for my welfare and for their welfare and those around us that isn't really going to happen, I feel, unless they're actually confronted. Now, when we say confronted, what do we mean by that? Do we mean it's going to have to cause catastrophe and a big scene, or fallout? Confronting can just mean turning towards something that I've been avoiding, but it could also mean a catastrophe too. So this is where we need discernment to decide what needs confrontation and what doesn't. And it's a really kind of loaded word. It's like, what skillfully needs addressing, and how does it need to be skillfully addressed, and when, in the right time. The how is the huge part of this, right? Um, and I think anybody that thinks you're weak is probably not, um, maybe have more to say about them than it does you be. So if someone says you're weak, it probably has more to do with how they are than you. And and in not talking, or well, debate. I don't have any really interest in debate. It doesn't do anything. If we can have a discussion among adults in a proper way, that we can help each other and work things out, remedy and resolve. I have no interest in debate either. And those who are interested in finding truth, that's a discussion. But some people, that's a whole nother huge topic. So I don't find arguing or debating of any help whatsoever. It's like, what can we do to help the situation and make it better? And not talking, that's great. I need to do that more. I'm going into a month-long Zen retreat here in maybe a couple months, and there's no talking. That's going to be a challenge for me. But it's for introverts, that's great because they recharge by not talking, not interacting. So silence is golden, and but sometimes we do need to speak out. There's some things where we do need to speak up, and speak up for ourselves, speak up for someone else. But how do we do it? When's the right time? Like I was talking about. And B says, I like to do more than explain. I guess it's judgment. I like conversation and getting to know people. Yeah, yeah. Well, I no, no, I don't know if it's judgment. I don't really know what you mean by I like to do more than explain. Yeah, this is, see, I got my teacher hat on here, my teacher role, so I'm explaining. And yeah, this is, I guess we'll have to maybe put this off for now, or who knows. But yeah, the judgment is a whole nother huge thing. and explanation in how we speak, who we speak to, and how, and conversation and getting to know people. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it really depends on what we need, and what the situation calls for. So thank you all for joining today, and yeah, and commenting as well. So may all your thought processes be of use and benefit, and all your non-thought processes too, when time comes for silence and non-thinking as well.